Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit matchup to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Hello, and a warm Mancunian welcome to all my incredible listeners out there. I'm Deepa Thomas Sutcliffe, your friendly host. You've just tuned into the 6th season of the Meet the Mancunian podcast. This podcast is a celebration of the unsung heroes, the change makers, and the passionate souls who are making a real difference in our vibrant city. From social enterprises to non-profits and community groups, I bring you the voices of worker bees and volunteers who are coming together for a common cause. Through heartfelt conversations, my guests share their experiences, dreams, and unwavering commitment to making a difference. From the challenges they've overcome to the triumphs that fuel their passion, their stories will leave you moved, enlightened, and brimming with hope. Join me on this audio adventure as my guests and I explore the transformative power of collective action and the remarkable impact we can create when we unite for a common cause. Their tales are a testament to the power of community, collaboration, and the indomitable Mancunian spirit. They not only address pressing issues right here in Manchester, but also offer insights and inspiration that resonate far beyond these boundaries. So whether you're commuting, on a run, or just relaxing at home, I invite you to tune in on Apple, Spotify, Google, or any of your favorite podcasting platforms. You can also log on to my website, meetthemancunian.co.uk. Let's embark on this journey of discovery and inspiration. For my new listeners, you can catch up on the incredible stories from the first 5 seasons at meetthemancunian.co.uk, where you'll also find out more about my own journey as a podcast. And to all my returning listeners, I can't thank you enough for your support. You make this podcast possible, and I'm immensely grateful. So join me as I continue to share these inspiring tales of change and community support from the beating heart of Manchester. Together, we can spread a bit of good news, spark some meaningful conversation, and inspire positive action. Thank you for being a part of the Meet the Mancunian community.
Welcome to the first episode of Season 6 of the Meet the Mancunian podcast, Social Impact Stories from Manchester.
Passionate about supporting injured veterans? We hear from Andy Schofield, fundraiser and enthusiast, walking with the wounded in this episode.
I'm delighted to introduce my guest, Andy Schofield, fundraiser and enthusiast, walking with the wounded. Thank you so much, Andy, for taking the time.
Oh, Deepa, thank you so much for having me on. It's an honour. It's great to chat to you.
Looking forward to hearing about your passion. And so tell us about how you found your passion for supporting mental health.
I think it's through lived and personal experience. You know, back in 2019, I really struggled with my mental health personally. I was in the military for 6 years. I left, found the transition fairly smooth. A lot of people do struggle with that transition back into civil life, as we call it in the army. But I was quite fortunate that I didn't really struggle to fit back into normal or civilian society. But my personal journey with mental health, it all stemmed from essentially not having the tools or the capability to deal with traumatic events, and things just built up internally and manifested themselves in depression, anxiety. Before I started struggling with my mental health personally, I was a director for a recruitment company, just had my first child, my daughter. Things were going well work-wise. I was in a loving, committed relationship. I was going to the gym 5 times a week. I was playing rugby. I was playing football, loads of friends and a big social group. So you'd think on paper that quite a nice life, quite an idyllic life, and people do have it way worse off than I had it. But because of those accumulation of traumatic events, childhood and throughout my life, I just didn't have the tools or capability to deal with them. And as I said, it felt like it came from nowhere. And all of a sudden, I was struggling to find joy in anything at all. We got to the point where I was probably a couple of days away from taking my own life. I moved out of the family home, struggled to get out of bed most days, stopped training, stopped playing rugby, cut myself off and isolated myself and withdrew from everybody, and really struggled for quite a while. And it was just a chance conversation with my brother who opened up to me and told me that he'd actually been struggling recently as well with his mental health. And that was such a relief for me, just hearing him say that, because I didn't feel isolated, I didn't feel alone. And it just kick-started my recovery and the burning desire to get better and be there for my daughter, be there for people in my life. It was quite a pivotal moment, I think, in my life, and it changed me forever going through that journey. And I remember when I was going through therapy and coming out the other side and getting out of that valley of despair, just this burning passion, this voice inside just driving me to go, look, if you could help one person get out of that situation that you're in, get out of that struggle, show them that there is a path. No matter how low they're feeling, no matter what they're going through at the moment, no matter how down and what they've been through in their life, there is a way. You can get out of it and you can get better. And it lit a fire in me to try and help as many people as I can, really. And not just help people, also raise that awareness as well about mental health and what it is genuinely like going through those struggles. And you as an individual may not go through them, but you may have people in your circle, in your friends, in your life that will or that may. What my passion was, yes, to help people, but also just get people to open up a little bit more, have more than a surface level conversation with people, genuinely connect and tell people about how you're feeling and why you may be feeling that way, just in the hope that it reduces stigma around mental health and also reduces the rate in which people are killing themselves, which I don't know if you know the figures or looked at the figures, but it's jarring to see. My focus is trying to connect with that male audience and get them to open up more, because I think not everybody, but general women and their friendship groups and their kind of social groups are much more dynamic than men. And I think they find it much easier to open up and have those real deep conversations. Whereas men, it's a lot more surface. We don't want to be a burden to anybody. We think we can fix it ourselves. I feel like we just don't know how to have those conversations. So I wanted to bare my soul and tell my story by doing this challenge in the hopes that it's help somebody else and starts them on their journey to recovery.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Actually, a couple of our guests have discussed this, both guests working in the mental health space as well as teen suicide prevention. There's a charity called Three Dads Walking, which raises awareness for young people who take their lives.
That was Papyrus. I did a 15,000 foot skydive for Papyrus to, again, raise that. Because if you look at the stats, the biggest killer of men and women under the age of 35 is suicide. The biggest killer of men under the age of 50 is suicide. It's a huge problem. I think 6,000 men across England and Wales every year take their own lives. So it's a huge issue, and it's a systemic issue that I feel just isn't really being addressed, or there isn't the awareness, the funding to help combat it. And I think those figures are high now. But if you look at the social economic climate at the moment, you look at the cost of living, debt's rising, I feel like these figures are just going to increase. And I feel like we need to, I'm not just relying on the government to do something, but just as people, as humans that live in communities, that have friendships, that have relationships, it's just being more open and honest and direct with people that you're comfortable with, that you trust, that you can have those conversations. Because I think relying on the government to step in and try and do something to combat this issue, I feel like we're waiting for a long time. I feel like individuals need to kind of get some personal sovereignty and identify these issues maybe within themselves and how they're feeling, and actively try and reach out. And it's easy for me to say that sat here now chatting to you, having gone through that painful journey. But when I was going through that, the last thing on my mind was to talk to somebody about it. And so I just want to try and get that message out there that it's not a weakness to be vulnerable, and it's not a weakness to open up and talk. That's pretty strong.
Absolutely. And I think it teaches you resilience, because it's a very important thing that now people are starting to discuss and acknowledge and show empathy and understanding. But like you said, there's a lot more work to be done. And perhaps there is something to be said about different demographics like males or young people or others, or even women or people of other affinities who need the support. And We just need to have these open conversations and say, I'm there for you.
Well, mental health doesn't discriminate. Doesn't care what gender you are, doesn't care what race you are, doesn't care what background you are, where you started in life, where you are in life. It doesn't discriminate. It's only because of how I was before going through this struggle and this journey. I had a stigma about mental health. I didn't understand it. I just thought people were weak, or how can you, what's wrong with you? Just crack on, carry on, you'll be fine. The message I'm trying to probably convey is probably to the old me is, they look, if you would have done this, then actually you might not have had to go through what you went through. But on that as well, I think I wouldn't change it either, if that makes sense, in a weird way, because I feel like it's made me a more well-rounded individual going through it, which I know it's probably a weird way to look at it, but it's made me way more empathetic, sympathetic, understanding. I'm a lot calmer. I'm a lot more resilient. I look back and think, well, I was at the lowest point a human could be. I was days away from taking my own life, and I had my suicide note written out in my head. I knew exactly what I was going to write and what I was going to say. So I was at the real lowest that anybody could be at. I just want to hopefully show or be a lighthouse for people and say, look, you can get through it. It doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, how old you are, what your background is. We're all in it together, essentially. We're all a community. We're all humans. If we can help each other through these difficult times, I think we'll be a much stronger society for it.
Absolutely. And that brings us very well to how you've taken your difficulty and your challenging period, turn that around, and you're trying to, like you said, be a beacon of good hope. Tell us about how you got involved with Walking with the Wounded and what exactly Walking with the Wounded does, please.
Absolutely. So Walking with the Wounded, a veteran charity, what makes them maybe slightly different is they offer a full wraparound service. So it doesn't matter how you're injured, or even if you are injured, it doesn't matter. It's about looking after that community that have served, giving back to those people and helping them get through difficult times. So Walking with the Wounded, they're absolutely fantastic. They offer the full wraparound service, so they help veterans get back into work. They help veterans stay in work. They've got a program called Op Courage, where they will take veterans through therapy and help with any mental health issues that they may be dealing with, but also physical issues as well. So it's a full wraparound service, and it's just a genuinely fantastic charity. I've met so many people from the charity now, and I couldn't say a bad word about anybody. The work they do, it is needed. They've been established for a little while now, and they're tremendous. I got involved with them because I actually signed up for the CEO Sleep Out in November last year at the Old Trafford Cricket Ground. So basically, you give up your bed, your home comforts for an evening, so you can kind of empathise with what it's like to sleep rough and live rough. And again, raising that awareness piece around that. And if you look at homelessness, a lot of the issues around homelessness more likely stem from mental health issues that haven't been addressed or dealt with. So it all kind of links together. So that's how I met Walking with the Wounded. I met Joe Loxbury, one of the directors there, and essentially I had this idea to work at Michael Page. It's a global recruitment company. They've got offices all over the UK, all over the world, but they've got an office in Manchester and in London. So when I was going through the interview process before starting with the business, I made it very clear that a big passion of mine is raising money for charities. And they've got a charity board that the business raises money for every year. I went to the committee and said, look, I've got an idea. It sounds like it's impossible. But I wanted to work from the Manchester office to the London office, and I wanted to do it in 3 days. Obviously, not much thought went into it for me, but I just basically extrapolated from a previous charity challenge that I did where I walked the South Downs Way, which, if people don't know, it's a 100-mile trail across the South Coast.
Okay.
It's beautiful. It's amazing. If anyone ever gets the chance to do it, definitely do it. But I did that in 48 hours. So 100 miles, 48 hours. So I just extrapolated from that, right, if I walk 6 kilometres an hour or 20 hours, sleep for 4, do that 3 times, I could complete this challenge. But the idea just kept growing in my mind, and I thought, right, who can I take this to? What can we do with it? And I Walking with the Wounded through the CEO Sleep Out. And a couple of weeks after that, I called Joel Lockbury. And then I said, look, I've got this idea. It sounds crazy, but this is what I want to do. We'll walk from London to Manchester. Again, I was still sticking with the 3 days at that point. And I want to make it a physical representation of a mental health journey. So take the ego out of it. I want to make it as difficult as I possibly can to show people what it is like physically, but as a representation to go through a mental health struggle. So London to Manchester, it was a 350-kilometre route, which is about 222 miles. And my plan was, right, I'm going to make it as difficult as I can. So carry on my kit and equipment, sleep rough in a tent, carry on my food, my water, do it solo to show that going through a mental health journey is physically, mentally demanding, straining. It's very isolated. You feel like it's insurmountable. It feels like you can never overcome it or get through it. So that was the birth, the idea of doing this challenge to raise that money and awareness. It just kind of snowballed. And when I actually did the challenge, it was December just gone. I started on the 5th, which is the Monday in the Cenotaph in London, finishing at the Cenotaph in Manchester on the Friday the 9th. And that week was the coldest week of the year as well. So not only did I make it as difficult as I could, the British weather chipped in and helped me out as well.
Wow, that must have been some experience. Tell us a little more about this challenge. I'm sure it was fairly physically challenging and mentally challenging. Did you have any support? Did you meet any interesting people on the way?
Absolutely. So luckily, we had a support team from a company called Challenge the Wild. Again, veterans and a veteran business run by a veteran. People that work tend to be veterans as well. And essentially they put together these challenges and basically do all the logistics and support. And also they helped me develop my training program leading up to it as well. So I have to say a shout out to Dan Stearson and Paul Johnson. They're the two chaps that I worked really closely with. Really good friends from Challenge the Wild. And a chap called Phoebe Townsend, who operates a company called Buzz Drones. He did all the content. Without those guys, I would not have got through that walk. 5 months previous to starting the walk, put together a training program. So every night, finish work in recruitment, it's long days, 10, 12-hour days. I'd go to the gym, do strength training to make sure my body was getting in good condition and I could carry the weight because the weight was around 25 kilos that I'd be carrying. So condition myself, then every evening after the gym, I'd put a backpack on, put a load of weight in it, just do a 10K every night. So every weekday, 5 days a week in the gym, and then a 10K weighted walk. And then every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I would do between 30 and 50K Saturday, 30 and 50K Sunday for 5 months. So that way it was quite an undertaking because I knew how difficult it was going to be. But I've always been quite in shape, train, gym, rugby, sport, etc. So I've always had a good base level of fitness. So I knew the fitness side of it wouldn't be an issue. For me, it was preparing myself mentally for it, what I'd have to go through. I have to go through some real dark places in my mind. And being on your own for that long, actually, at first, I was really worried about it when I was going through the training, and I'd get up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday, walk for 12 hours, and being on your own for that long scared me a little bit, but actually I became really good friends with myself going through the training, and that real positive self-talk and positive affirmations, and just found little that would get me through. But also, I would use the fuel from what I had been through and what I'd gone through and use that to push me forward. So look where you were and look where you are. Come on, this is just a walk. You can do this. But the reason I had to train so much is because trying to complete 50 kilometers in 5 days, that's 70, 80 kilometers every day.
Wow.
So it's essentially equivalent to an ultra marathon every day for 5 days. So I had to get my body prepped for it, make sure my feet were prepped and they could handle it. But like I said, a lot of it as well was preparing myself mentally. And I'm really committed to it. I don't think I've ever committed to anything more in my life than I committed to training for this walk, because I knew that if I could complete it, hopefully it would just raise awareness and help people and show people that in spite of what you're going through, you can get through it and you can actually use this real dark time in your life to fuel you forward and drive you forward. And actually you might be able to achieve things that you wouldn't have achieved if you didn't go through that. So try and reframe it, see it not as a positive, because it's not a positive, but just see it as something other than almost an affliction.
I like that very much, and I like the bit that you became friends with yourself over that training period and presumably the journey as well. What would you say is the impact that you were able to make through this journey?
Honestly, I'm quite a humble man from a working class background. I tried to not take myself too seriously, and the outreach and the response was overwhelming, I'll be honest, in an amazing way. People were leaving messages on my donation page just saying that they've been through something similar, and actually hearing somebody talk about it normalised it as well and made them feel kind of more at peace with things. And people just reaching out saying thank you for putting yourself through what you put yourself through physically and mentally to try and raise this awareness and get rid of that stigma that does hang over mental health. Honestly, the response was incredible. Even people really close to me, a lot of people didn't have any idea what I was going through, so they were hearing the story for the first time. And whilst I was training for it, unfortunately, one of my friends that I played rugby with for over a decade, a chap called Lloyd, he unfortunately took his own life whilst I was training to do this walk, trying to stop people doing that. It's one of those things that a lot of people do go through it, and more people know somebody that has unfortunately taken their own life. But again, it just kind of reaffirmed how important it was to do it and get the message out there. And losing him, and I went to the rugby club and did a talk and I told my story, again, just in the hopes that it would make people open up, and it had an instant response. As soon as I told my story, there was a few tears because, again, I've known these men for half my life. They had no idea that I was going through that because I was always life and soul of the party. So they had no idea. Instantly, people that I would have thought were struggling started opening up, saying that they were struggling and what they were feeling, and also they had friends that were going through something similar. Again, I think what humanised the process was the commonality between everybody's experience, regardless of background. People were going through and feeling the exact same that I was feeling, and it was just like, wow, we're so connected and we're so similar. But, you know, if you look on social media, you look at the news, you think, though, with the real humbling thing for me was the commonality between people's experiences. They were all so similar, nuanced and different in their own ways, but there's a kind of golden thread that ran through everyone's experience, and it was that almost feeling a shame for the way they were feeling and not understanding why they were feeling and how to get through it. That was the common theme.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so glad you were able to reach out to so many people. And I remember reading about it, and definitely it was very impactful. Are there other charities or organizations you want to talk about that you're supporting?
I think actively at the moment it's probably just Walking with the Wounded. As I said, I've done other charity events. I've done a 15,000-foot skydive for papyri, and I'm petrified of heights. If I get on the second rung of a ladder to change a light bulb, I'm shaking. So again, it was pushing myself out of my comfort zone to show people that they can do the same. So I did that. I've done quite a few 10Ks, half marathons for like Sport Relief as well. Obviously, a couple of other veteran charities. One of the reasons I did the South Downs Way is because, unfortunately, when I was out in Afghanistan, one of my comrades and friend was unfortunately killed by the people that we were trying to help, essentially. He had a girlfriend, a family that were just left. Excuse me, I can't remember the name of the charity, but essentially what they do is their sole focus was to help bereaved families of people that died whilst in Afghanistan. So we did the South Downs Way in his memory to raise money for those charities that supported his family whilst they were going through their difficult time as well.
Oh, that's really good that you could help your friends, family. I'm so sorry about that. How can interested people reach out to you and learn more? And you can give out your website as well as that of Walking for the Wounded.
Sure. The walk that I did, it was the flagship for an annual charity event that Walking with the Wounded do, which is called Walking Home for Christmas, where you don't have to do what I did, because who would want to do that? Just as much as you want to walk, it can be a kilometre, it doesn't have to be long, but it's all about raising money for that charity. And so every year they do Walking Home for Christmas. If you do want to get involved with any of the events that they run events throughout the year, just go to their website. It's walkingwiththewounded.com. If anybody wants to reach out, they can find me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, it's Andy Schofield. I've tried to systematically go back to everybody that reached out to me when I was doing the challenge and thank them and their contributions, but I'm happy to have a chat to anybody. Even if they're not struggling, I'm more than happy to meet up for a beer and help anybody that I can.
Thank you for sharing that. And absolutely, I'll include both your LinkedIn and the Walking for the Wounded page in the show notes of the website so people can find it easily. And hopefully they'll get in touch.
Yeah, thank you.
What advice would you have for people looking to start a similar movement in their local community, the UK or anywhere in the world, if they want to do something for mental health awareness or to support veterans? How do they get started?
You don't have to start big, start small. Speak to your friends, ask them how they're doing, then ask them again. That it has been proven to make people open up. How you doing? Your natural response is, I'm fine. And you go, you wait, you pause, how you doing? And then people tend to open up a little bit. So yes, you could do something similar to what I did, but I think for me, start locally. Speak with your friends more, see how they're doing. Speak with your family. If someone in your community, there's community centres you could go and volunteer at. I think you don't have to do a big, massive challenge or an event. If you're truly passionate about helping people, start close to home and then expand out. So that's kind of what I did. If anybody wanted to follow in my footsteps, there's loads of charities out there that are crying out for people to be a fundraiser for them. It doesn't have to be mental health. It could be something that maybe you've had personal experience with or family member or friend has had experience with. Reach out to the charities, reach out to the local charities, the national charities, and see if there's some way you can get involved and help them raise money.
Thank you so much. That's great advice. An opportunity now for you to talk about anything that I haven't asked you about, anything you want to share, or anything coming up in the next few months.
I don't know how much I can share, but there is a potential challenge that will be coming early next year. I can't really say too much about it. I don't think at this stage. We're still trying to get funding for it, essentially. So we're still looking to reach anybody that would be interested in sponsoring. But essentially, it's a similar thing. I'm trying to connect to communities that are close to my heart. So the communities I'm trying to connect are the rugby community and the veteran community. I've played rugby all my life. Loose Ends is a fantastic charity for ex-rugby players and people affiliated with rugby that are suffering with mental health. They offer that service. What I'm trying to do with this challenge is make it more about connecting communities and people and men, everybody just opening up and speaking more. So that should be coming early next year. It will be rugby related as well. So if anybody knows rugby and knows what happens in February in rugby, it might give them a bit of a clue there.
As somebody who doesn't understand rugby, that went over my head, but I assume there are some of my listeners who can totally understand.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll ask you now the signature questions I ask all my guests. So the first one is to describe the Mancunian spirit in a word or a phrase.
We're just worker bees, aren't we? Everyone's friendly. No one really takes themselves too serious. If you've got a problem or you've got an issue, I don't think you can find much friendlier people than Mancunians, in my personal opinion. I've been around the world. I've lived in loads of different countries. There's nothing like Manchester. It really is the best city. It's fantastic. And that is purely down to the people, just the spirit of the individuals that live within the city. It's my home. I love it. Like I said, I've lived in loads of different cities, and this is home.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I totally agree. It is a lovely city, and I'm learning a little bit about it every time I talk to one of my passionate guests like you.
Good.
Can you share a Mancunian who inspires you and tell us why?
Well, that's a good question. I suppose for me, Marcus Rashford, what he's done in terms of the school dinners and standing up for people that don't tend to have a voice, the working class, we don't tend to have a voice, especially on a big stage, and the fact that he's been a beacon for those people and fighting on behalf of those people. And then you look at last season to this season, what he's done, and again, what he's gone through, and he's shown that it's all about that mental fortitude. They were both from Winshaw. It's just someone so close to home that come from a very similar background to myself, and seeing what he's achieved, especially this season, the accolades he's got, he absolutely deserves. There's always going to be some negativity out there, but no one can argue with what he's done and giving the voice to people that don't have a voice.
I've seen some of his charity work. It's definitely very inspiring, but so nice to know that you're both Wythenshawe peeps.
Yeah.
What's the most important life lesson you've learned so far?
I suppose a phrase that I heard that I love and that I try and stick to is comparison is the thief of joy. It's a great phrase. And I think for me, when green envy comes out, I'm looking at other people, what they're doing, thinking, I'm not achieving what they are. I always just keep saying that to myself as a mantra, that you're on your own path, you're not on other people's. Don't compare yourself to others, compare yourself to yourself. Where were you 12 months ago? Look where you've come now. Look what you've achieved. Actually, going through your life, I think kind of having a gratitude journal helps. And I think sometimes just reflecting on your own life a little bit and being kind to yourself. But comparison is a thief of joy. I think if you look at social media and you look at the amount of people that are on those platforms, and then also the increase in people taking their own lives, correlation is a causation, but it is having an impact on people. And a lot of that comes down to comparison. People are through a lens and looking at what people want them to see. But everybody knows couples that in person, you know them, they can't stand each other. But on social media, you would think they had the perfect relationship and that they were the perfect couple. And I think people can conflate social media and these profiles to actual real life, and it's not the same. Everybody struggles, everybody goes through hard times, and I think no one's going to post that. What people are going to post is the highlights of their day, the highlights of their week in life, and you can sometimes inadequate or that you're not achieving, and that again that can sometimes have a spiral. I think there's a lot of kind of girls and women, especially the younger generation, that are struggling with their mental health, and the increase in people in that demographic taking their own life. I feel, in my personal opinion, and looking at the stuff that I've looked at and read, there's the direct result of social media, social platforms, and thinking that they have to be this perfect airbrushed person. Nobody looks like they do on social media in real life. I think if people can just kind of remember that, stick on your path and compare yourself to yourself.
This is so true, and we all put very heavily edited versions of ourselves, our best self, out there on social media or for public consumption. So that authenticity isn't always there, and some people, especially the younger people, they confuse that and they think that's what they need to. They have unrealistic expectations of what they need to achieve and what they need to be. So
yeah,
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
do agree. There's a lot of good things about social media as well because it raises awareness for good causes, but it's a double-edged sword.
Isn't I think platforms like social media that have connected the world. I feel like we're the most connected we've ever been as a race, but we're also the most disconnected we've ever been. You know, I'm only 34. I'm not old, but even in my lifetime, I've seen a huge difference in just the way people interact with each other. And it's just it's quite interesting to watch, but it's also quite sad in a way that we're the most connected we've ever been, but yet we're the most isolated we've ever been.
It is a very
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
note. That's not something to just brush away. It is something we need to acknowledge, and we just need to, like, one of the things a podcast does is tries to put a little positivity out there, tries to send good news out there
Absolutely.
because there's so much bad news. So you're contributing to that.
Well, that's the hopefully. Like you said, there is obviously loads of benefits from social media as well. And if you've got family members all over the world, you can speak with them, you know where they're up to, you keep in touch, and you don't even have to necessarily speak, but you can see what they post. So it is a fantastic platform. I just feel like as a race, we're still trying to figure it out. We've only had it for 15 years? What is it, 15 years, 20 years, something like that? We're still figuring out how it works, how it fits into our lives. And I think hopefully we'll see a like decrease maybe in that reliance and engagement, and obviously people hopefully then feeling a little happier as well and more content in their own skin.
Lots of people are doing digital detoxes and they're taking time off from social media or time off from being online. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, can I say flying? Here's a great question. I'm trying to think of what I would pick. Well, I probably would go as basic as being able to fly. It'd be just to experience what it'd be like to fly. But I suppose I did that when I jumped out of a plane, but it definitely wasn't flying. It was falling with style. I think just being able to connect people and open up understanding in a way, just because sometimes people will talk to you and say things perhaps inside they're not feeling that way. So it'd be good to be able to scratch the surface and see how people are actually feeling and what's actually going on with them, rather than this facade that sometimes people put up.
Very good one, and I hope it comes true someday. I guess you're developing your skills of empathy, which will help to some extent, empathy, emotional intelligence, and other things.
Yes, absolutely.
Is there a nice or a funny story you'd like to end on to share with listeners? Something from your walk, something from Manchester, something from rugby?
I found something interesting. I don't know if it's funny or not, but when I was 12, I was in a TV show called Stig of the Dump, which was on BBC One on a Sunday. It is a book. They made a series and then they rehashed it again back in the North. For the background that I'm from, you could do drama or that. You know what I'm thinking? Hearing my mum just saying, well, what have you got to lose? You know what I'd be looking back on your life and thinking, oh, I wish I'd give that a go. She's like, right, go for it. And I managed to get through all the auditions and get the part. The way I'm getting to with this is a group of friends that adamant I have to go round one day. Obviously, they'd let slip. That was in Stig of the Dump, and they'd gone on Amazon, bought the DVD. I didn't know this, but everyone was messaging me this day saying, are you definitely going to come round tonight? I was like, I've said I'm coming. I'll come. And as I've walked in, everyone's already there. And as I've walked in, I just hear the intro music to Stig of the Dump. And I was just like, I cannot believe this has happened. So they bought the DVD. And there's 6 episodes, and we sat and watched back to back every episode. And every time I was in it, I spoke, or was mentioned, I had to neck my drink. So I had to finish my drink. I can't really remember much of the night other than that. Ever.
It is a good story.
I always keep the Stig of the Dump story quiet, but they managed to get it out of me, and then they ran with it. I never lived it down.
No, but what are good friends for if you can't share embarrassing stories?
Exactly. Friends make you realise not to take yourself too serious.
Thank you so much. It's been really a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, thank you too. It's been a pleasure to have a chat, and thank you for sharing my story.
Andy, thank you for talking to me about supporting veterans today.
Dear listener, thank you so much for listening to the first episode of the Meet the Mancunian podcast season 6. Tune in every Tuesday for a new episode.
Or log on to meetthemancunian.co.uk. Listen to all the episodes and learn more about my podcasting story.
Next week, on Tuesday, 12th September 2023, I speak to Matt Richardson about supporting the creation of social value.
Thank you for joining me on this enriching journey through the social impact stories of Manchester with the 6th season of the Meet the Mancunian podcast. I hope the stories you've heard today have sparked a fire of inspiration within you. May they serve as a gentle reminder that no dream is too big and no passion is too small. Your feedback means the world to me. Visit www.mancunian.co.uk to share your thoughts, suggestions, and the causes that touched your heart. Your input helps me craft a podcast that truly touches hearts and makes a difference. Stay connected with the podcast on social media. You can find us at @Meet the Mancunian on Instagram and Facebook, or follow us on Twitter as @MancunianPod. Sharing and leaving a comment would be a fantastic way to spread the word and build a vibrant community of change makers. Before I sign off, remember to introduce this podcast to your friends and family. Together, we can amplify the impact and reach of these incredible stories. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of the Meet the Mancunian family. Your support fuels my passion, and I can't wait to bring you more compelling stories that will touch your hearts and fuel your soul. Until we meet again in the next episode, let's keep creating waves of change together. The world needs more Mancunian spirit, so go out there and be the change you wish to see. Take care, stay inspired, and I use Zencastr to record my inspiring guests on the Meet the Mancunian podcast. Zencastr is an audio-video platform that was made for podcasting. It's super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. All you need to do is log in with your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. You can also record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. I even host my podcast on Zencastr. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code Mancunian20, that's MANCIAN 2023, and you'll get 30% off your first month on any Zencastr paid plan. There are also free plans if you want to try it out. I want you to have the same easy experience as I do with all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story now. Thank you.